Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. If you haven't checked out A Wicked World on Patreon yet, and you want to have access to over 60 exclusive videos with new ones being added each month, then make sure you do that using the link in the description box below. Now, I have a bit of a different video for you today, in which I'll be covering 3 cases that, in my opinion, didn't get nearly enough media attention. These are all also cases that have been requested by you. So let's get into our first story of Azella Ortiz. Azella Sky Ortiz was born in Worcester, Massachusetts on August 31st, 2020, to her parents, Crystal Romero and Francisco Ortiz. She was a happy little girl who loved building with blocks, going to the playground, and just playing with her 2 siblings, who at the time of this story were 6 and 2 years old. Azella lived full-time at the Sever Square Apartments in Worcester, with her father Francisco, her paternal grandmother, who for some reason has not been named, and her 2 siblings. The little girl's mother, Crystal, was only sort of in her life, and she would occasionally, sporadically, visit Azella and her other 2 children. When it was convenient for her, that is. On October 15th, 2024, shortly after 4:30 p.m., a call was placed to 911, saying that 4-year-old Azella had fallen to the floor, and now she was unresponsive. When officers arrived at the home shortly after, the little girl was found lying on the floor, not breathing, and only wearing a t-shirt. She was cold to the touch, had bruises all over her body, and was covered in feces. Azella's father, Francisco, was the only adult in the home at the time, and so he was brought in for questioning. Authorities also noticed that the family's apartment was in complete disarray, and there was evidence of drug use scattered throughout. 4-year-old Azella was rushed to UMass Memorial Medical Center in Worcester, where she would be pronounced dead. According to Francisco, his daughter had been playing when she had fallen off the kitchen table, which caused her to suddenly fall unresponsive. He then blamed her other bruises on previous accidental falls. But doctors found that not only did Azella have bruises all over her body, including on her eye, earlobe, neck, chin, arms, chest, abdomen, hips, legs, knees, and feet, but the little girl also had multiple abrasions on her back and a skull fracture which was consistent with falling from the height of 2 stories. Not just off of a table. Additionally, Azella had multiple rib fractures which were in different states of healing, indicating prior. The little girl's siblings, who were 2 and 6 years old, were found to be malnourished and dehydrated. Her 6-year-old sister's teeth were rotting, and fentanyl was found in her system. This sibling, who had never been enrolled in school before, was also said to be nonverbal. Therefore, she was not able to give law enforcement a personal account of what had happened inside the home. Due to the nature of Azella and her siblings' injuries, their father, Francisco Ortiz, was placed under arrest, and he was charged with assault and battery on a child, domestic assault and battery, recklessly permitting substantial bodily injury to a child, and reckless endangerment of a child. Both Francisco and his mother, who, keep in mind, lived with the family, denied that there had been any going on in the home. Now, the children's mother, Crystal Romero, claimed that she had seen 1 bruise on Azella a few days prior to her death, but she had not reported it. According to a Facebook post that Crystal made 2 years prior, under her alias Rose Dawson, she left Francisco because when she'd arrived home from the hospital with her youngest child after giving birth, he had spit in her face. Whether that's literally or figuratively, though, I'm not sure. Either way, she said that Francisco also was calling the children bad names. Yet she had left the kids in his custody, and then only gone to visit them sporadically. Francisco also had a criminal history which dated back to 2006. He'd been charged with drug possession with intent to distribute in 2015, and he had some even more serious charges in 2010, which included assault with intent to murder, while having a loaded handgun with no license for it. Child Services had been involved in the family's lives in the past too, but at the time of Azella's death, there had been no open DCF case. The agency has since refused to reveal any further details about their involvement. As if it wasn't bad enough that Crystal had pretty much abandoned her kids with Francisco, She also tried to defend him after Azella's death. In a Facebook post, she claimed that Francisco really loved the kids and the media was making it out to be more than it really was. She then stated that the reason why their 6-year-old daughter had been so skinny was because she was autistic and wouldn't eat or drink anything unless it was out of her sippy cup. She claimed that she literally had to be forced to eat. Crystal also stated that she had been trying to get her services. But let's be real, she easily could have gotten her services, especially since child services had been involved in the family's lives. Crystal additionally opened up a GoFundMe account following Azella's death, which left her open for even further criticism online. As of right now, there has been no further details on Francisco's case or when it will go to trial, but he is currently being held at the Worcester County Jail. 4-year-old Azella Ortiz's funeral was held privately on October 25, 2024 at Nordgren Memorial Chapel in Worcester. Zayden Mark Doparak was born in St. Louis, Missouri on December 29, 2017, to his mother, Kirsten Dopirak, and his father, Blake Dopirak. He was affectionately nicknamed Nino, and he was an outgoing, energetic, and sweet little boy who loved dogs, especially his own service dog. Zayden was also obsessed with the Cardinals baseball team and the show Blue's Clues. In February of 2018, when Zayden was just 5 weeks old, he was rushed to a nearby hospital with life-threatening head trauma. He was seizing, and once he was admitted, it was determined that he had suffered a non-accidental traumatic brain injury, which was caused by his skull being crushed by his father Blake's hands. Little Zayden would miraculously survive this incident, but due to the severity of his injuries, doctors did not believe that he would ever learn to walk. This was quickly reported to Child Protective Services, and the infant was then taken from his parents and placed into foster care with Dawn and Jeff James. While with them, Zayden thrived, and he even learned to walk.
He overcame a lot of obstacles that they said that he would not overcome.
Jeff and Dawn James took Zayden in when he was just 4 months old.
A non-accidental traumatic brain injury at 5 weeks old. That's what put him in the foster care system. From what we were told, he was held and his skull was crushed by hand.
We were told, due to the initial brain injury, that he would never walk.
He not only walked, he thrived. He loved his dog and was glued to Cardinal baseball.
He was excelling in everything that they said he would never do.
Despite all this, Zayden's mother and father were never charged with harming him. The couple also took pictures together while their son was in the hospital, like this one, of them wearing matching Mr. and Mrs. Disney shirts, cuddled together, acting like Blake had not just caused these horrific injuries to his infant son. It seems that Zayden was still allowed to have visits with his biological parents, since Kirsten continued to post pictures of them together on her social media. At the same time, the boy's foster parents, Dawn and Jeff, began petitioning for guardianship of him. They felt like Zayden would not be safe if he was returned to his parents, and since he was doing so well with them, they thought that a judge would agree. Then in late 2021, when the little boy had been with his foster parents for close to 4 years, his biological parents, Blake and Kirsten, who were still together, decided that they wanted custody back. And so they petitioned the courts. But Zayden's foster parents, Dawn and Jeff, told the judge who was handling the case that they did not believe he would be safe if he was returned to Kirsten and Blake's custody. Additionally, Zayden's social workers, a guardian ad litem, and a doctor all warned the judge that they believed he would be in danger if he went back to Blake. Regardless, Family Court Commissioner Diane Monahan ignored their warnings, and she decided to give Blake and Kirsten another chance. She then ordered that they begin a trial reunification with Zayden. This meant that the Jameses would still have legal custody, but Zayden would go to live with his biological parents. And well-being checks were still to be conducted from time to time. So at the end of December of 2021, 4-year-old Zayden went back to living with his biological mother and father. And another court date was set for January 5th, so the judge could see how things were going. But before that could happen, police and first responders would be called to the family's home. Around 8 a.m. on January 2nd, 2022, Zayden's father Blake called 911, saying that his son had just suddenly stopped breathing. When emergency responders arrived on the scene at the Waterford West Apartments in Manchester, Missouri, they attempted life-saving measures on Zayden before they rushed him to a nearby hospital. The 5-year-old was suffering from multiple head injuries, and he had hematomas and retinal hemorrhaging. He would be placed on life support, and in the meantime, his father Blake would be brought down to the police station for questioning. During his interview with officers, Blake seemed pretty calm for the most part, but also had periodic moments of being upset about his son's hospitalization. The father admitted to being the only adult home at the time that Zayden collapsed, but at the same time insisted that he had no idea how it had happened. At the end of his interview with detectives, Blake was unbelievably released from custody. The following day, January 3rd, 2022, Zayden would succumb to his injuries and he would pass away in the hospital.
The James petitioned for guardianship, and after 4 years, they never thought a judge would disagree.
Everybody was on the same page. If this child was returned, something would happen to this child again.
From state social workers to a pediatrician, James says everyone testified it was too dangerous to send Zayden back home.
When you have so many people telling you that if this child is returned home, he will be killed, you need to listen to that. We were shocked when the judge said she was going to do a trial reunification. I begged to be able to give this boy a life that he deserved.
Love you.
Why? When you had so many people, was he just a number? Was he just a case number for you?
A subsequent autopsy by the medical examiner determined that the little boy's manner of death was homicide, and his cause of death was ruled as non-accidental closed head trauma, meaning that he had likely been shaken or beaten by his father Blake. It wasn't until 9 days after Zayden's death on January 12, 2024, that his 24-year-old father, Blake Dopirak, was placed under arrest. He was then charged with abuse or neglect of a child, resulting in death. And for some reason, he was given a bail of $250,000, cash only. However, Blake wasn't able to post this bail, so instead, he sat in jail for the next 3 years as prosecutors continued to build their case and prepared for trial. Before that trial could ever happen, however, in June of 2025, the father would plead guilty to a lesser charge of endangering the welfare of a child, resulting in death. He would later be sentenced to just 24 years in jail. He nearly killed his son when he was only 5 weeks old, then succeeded in killing him when he was 4, yet he only got 24 years. Unbelievable. Blake will be out by the time he's just 51. Zayden's former foster parents, Dawn and Jeff James, said that he should still be alive. Speaking outside the courthouse after Blake's sentencing, Dawn James said, "We should have never been here if the courts would have originally listened." She and her husband are, however, happy that the little boy has finally gotten justice. Since Zayden's death, the family court commissioner, Diane Monahan, the one who placed him back into his biological parents' custody, has stepped down from her position. The boy's foster mother, Dawn James, said that when this happened, she and her husband knew that no family would be put through this again, and it restored their faith. Jaxon, or Jax, James Burnette was born in Wentzville, Missouri on September 27, 2016, to his mother, Megan Hendricks, and his father, Robert James Burnette. Jaxon's parents were pretty young when he was born, as they were both just 19 at the time. When the little boy was only 6 weeks old on November 7, 2016, he was rushed to St. Joseph Hospital West in St. Louis. However, due to the severity of his injuries, he would be transported to nearby Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. Jaxon was placed on life support and was listed as in extremely critical condition. The infant had bleeding on his brain, liver contusions, multiple broken bones, which included a broken arm and new and old fractures to his clavicle and ribs. According to Jaxon's mother, Megan, the infant had just choked on some milk, then suddenly fallen unresponsive. Both she and Robert claimed they had no idea where his other injuries had come from. Regardless, as soon as doctors saw the numerous injuries on the baby boy's body, Child Services was contacted and he was placed into protective custody. Jaxon would fight for his life, and there were at times reports of his condition improving. However, on November 28, 2016, Jaxon Burnette passed away after he was removed from his life support. Now, it's pretty clear, looking at pictures that Megan had taken of Jaxon when he turned 1 month old and posted online, that he was being abused. She had put these photos up on her social media too, even though the infant is clearly covered in bruises, has a split lip, and blood on his onesie. Then there's these photos of Jaxon's father holding him by the back of his neck, like he's an object and not a baby. When Megan was later interviewed by police, she admitted that she had lied to hospital staff about not knowing where Jaxon's injuries had come from. She then told officers that she had seen the boy's father, Robert, hurt him on 3 separate occasions, including when he had grabbed him by the back of the neck and slammed him into the bed to make him stop crying. She also admitted to seeing her boyfriend stick his fingers down Jaxon's throat in an attempt to find his voice box and make him stop crying. This attack was witnessed by a roommate who lived with the family too, but that person was never punished by police. Megan confessed to detectives that both she and Robert were aware of the dangers of shaking a baby because they had both been required to watch a video about it before leaving the hospital after Jaxon's birth. While Megan admitted that she knew her son was in danger and had even been to her parents' house several times with the little boy, she had never once asked for help. When a detective asked her why she didn't do anything, she said it was because she didn't want any confrontation with her boyfriend Robert. She was additionally worried that her father would hurt Robert if she said anything, and she'd rather stay with him than have that happen. During the course of Megan's interrogation, she remained emotionless and only referred to Jaxon as the kid or the baby. She did pretend to cry at one point, but stopped as soon as the officer left the room. When Jaxon's father, Robert, was questioned by detectives, he admitted to shaking him and being too rough with him. He also admitted to shaking Jaxon so hard that his head bounced off the back of his neck. This was said to have occurred in the family's home, which was located on the 100th block of St. Charles Street in Wentzville, between October 18th and November 7th, since the time that Jaxon was just 3 weeks old. The day after Jaxon was admitted to the hospital, his father Robert was placed under arrest, and he was charged with felony CA. Once the baby boy passed away, his charges were amended to CA, resulting in death. He was then held on a $500,000 bond. Jaxon's mother, Megan Hendricks, was additionally placed under arrest, and she was also charged with CA. She was held on a $250,000 bond. Robert's parents would tell authorities that their son had a history of violent tendencies and had tried to kill his own brother a number of times over the years. He had beat him, stabbed him, smothered him, and attempted to drown him. The parents also stated that Robert had been in mental institutions multiple times due to his severe anger issues. At Robert's initial court hearing, he would tell the judge that he had bipolar disorder and Asperger's, like that's some sort of excuse for what he had done. Robert also claimed that he had been seeking medication and counseling ever since Jaxon's death. He was then placed on self-removal watch at the St. Charles County Jail. Outside the courthouse, close to 24 people, all strangers, had a prayer vigil for baby Jaxon. They held blue balloons and signs that read, "Justice for Jax." In August of 2018, both Robert and Megan would plead guilty to their charges. Robert would later be sentenced to 26 years in prison, and Megan would receive a sentence of 21 years behind bars. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon, so check it out on patreon.com/awickedworld, or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims are never forgotten, and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a story you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email to awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.